Hello everyone, welcome to the HEC Paris Executive Education Virtual Conference Room for this new webinar of our Masterclass for Lebanon. When joining the conference room, you will notice that your microphones have been switched off. However, you'll be able to ask questions and to make comments by using the chat box. The moderators will relay your questions and your comments to our professor. We will begin this webinar in 1 minute. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to you all. My name is Nicolas Lemoine, and I'm in charge of custom programs at HEC Paris. On behalf of the board, the faculty, and all of our teams, we hope you're keeping well during these unprecedented times. As an academic institution, we strongly believe that the current situation lends itself to reflection, and that the best way for us to support you is to share the analysis of HEC Paris professors. So the presentation will last about 30 minutes, maybe a bit more, knowing Hélène, and will be followed by a 15 minutes Q&A question and answer session. There are many of you today. We will do our best to respond to your questions. So with us today is Hélène Musikas, Associate Professor of Strategy in the Education track. And this afternoon, Hélène, you're going to speak to us about resilience in business. But first, I would like to ask Nicolas Boucater, who would like to welcome you on behalf of the Lebanese community. Nicolas?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, dear Nicolas. Good evening. First, I would like to welcome you all the participants, and pursuant to our first very inspiring masterclass last week from Jérémy Guez, whereby we received so many positive comments. Again, I would like to transmit on behalf of all the Lebanese participating and that participated in the past to these webinars and our alumni, a very more thank you to you, Nicolas, to HEC Executive Education on bringing to the Lebanese community, to the business leaders, the best in terms of education and crisis management. The crisis today being several folds, being it monetary, economic, banking, humanitarian, sanitary, and lately the explosion, Lebanon is in the eye of a devastating storm. The question is how to gear our minds and build back the resilience amidst this crisis. The masterclass of today will approach this topic and will bring some lights on some questions we have in mind, hopefully. Thank you again, and please welcome me all in welcoming Mrs. Hélène Musikas, Assistant Professor of Strategy at HEC. Dearest Hélène, thanks a million for providing us with your valuable time today. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nicolas and Nicolas. It's always a pleasure to say Nicolas because I have a lot of them around me. My son is Nicolas, my brother is Nicolas, my uncle as well. So thank you very much for the invitation. When we were preparing this class, we had a little discussion with Nicolas, and he said, you know, be careful because resilience, it's something, you know, it's a word that we hear too often in Lebanon. So I've given it a thought, and actually I think that what I'd like to talk to you about today is actually much beyond resilience. So in fact, the notion I would like to develop is even more stronger, I would say, than resilience, and it's called anti-fragility. And this notion of anti-fragility, and I want to apply it to business, has actually been proposed by a Lebanese American author. And this is how he describes this concept, basically what you see here. Anti-fragility is beyond resilience and robustness. The resilient basically resists to shocks and stays the same after the shock. The anti-fragile gets better with the shocks and the shaking, if you wish. So this is what I'd like to develop today, not being very exhaustive, but really insisting on some few elements that can make an organization, an enterprise, anti-fragile, and also building upon some work that we've been doing at HEC in the past few years. So if we want to look at, this notion of anti-fragile in more detail, we could look at these curves. I think they're quite interesting. So, we look at the stress. Some systems or some organizations are going to break under stress. They're called fragile. Some are going to be resilient, so they will come back to their initial state. Anti-fragile is even more ambitious. It's about getting even better after the stress. And so, I have a little question for you just to basically embark you on the topic. And I'd like to ask you, would you like to build an anti-fragile company? So you can answer. Take a few.
Hélène, you are muted.
Yes, I. So maybe we can broadcast the results. Okay, so I hope we're all in this together. Thank you very much. So I think that the first thing we could try to think about, because if we want to build anti-fragile organizations, is actually what makes organization or system anti-fragile. So I have, there are many elements, but I'm going to, in a second poll, to actually propose some of them. So again, I will ask my colleagues to make a few proposals on, what can be the characteristics of anti-fragile systems. So are they flexible? Are they simple? Are they big and large? Are they monolithic? Are they efficient? Are they multiple? Are they with a lot of surplus? Or are they connected? Please give me your thoughts on that. Okay, so again, I will wait for my colleagues to broadcast the results when people have voted. Okay, great. So what do we see here? A lot of you think that these systems or organizations should be flexible, should be simple, efficient, with surplus, connected. Okay, so this is really interesting because what has been found is that in fact, some of the characteristics of anti-fragile organization is actually that they are not as efficient as they could be. If you think of a very efficient organization, this is an organization that has very little slack, very little surplus, if you wish. And when a very adverse event arrives, there are no extra resources to actually, basically change things or adapt things. So actually, efficiency is not one of the I would say characteristic of these type of organizations. If you could continue broadcasting the results, I'm asking my colleague if it's possible, because I'd like to make a few more comments on the poll. Okay, thank you very much. So efficient is not actually the main characteristic of these topics. Flexible, definitely. Simplicity is actually as well an element of anti-fragile organizations, which means that everything that is, not useful has been taken away. An image that we could take are bureaucracies. If you think of bureaucracies, they are very complex and rigid at the same time. And we can imagine if, a major event happens, bureaucracy will not be able to respond. And I think we've seen this in the recent months, because a lot of bureaucracies, a lot of governments have not been able to address, at least very well for most of them, this, virus COVID crisis that we are living today. So simple is a characteristic, with surplus is a characteristic, connected, definitely, you're absolutely right. And multiple is also a characteristic of anti-fragile organization. To actually illustrate, the key characteristics, I think there are two that really attracted my attention. So the first one is the idea that, anti-fragile organizations are actually made of smaller parts. Okay, so here we have pictures of cells, okay, of cells, and these smaller parts themselves are fragile. In other words, it's never something that is very monolithic. These types of systems or organizations are made of smaller parts that can be fragile, that can die under a shock, but at the same time that are able to multiply themselves, just like cells. Every day in our body, cells die, but also cells, are born, divided to create new cells. So that's one key characteristic of these organizations. So the smaller parts that can actually die when necessary, at the same time, a continuous multiplication in a way of additional parts, which means, so smaller fragile parts, which means that actually these organizations, one of their key characteristics so that they can be, continuously reborn, is that they have developed a lot of options, okay? They have developed a lot of options. They have really prepared from themselves a lot of positive options. So what do we call a positive option? It's an option for the future that has very high probability, to create maybe a small loss for you, and a lower probability of a really great gain, okay? And these organizations, if they have these options, they can really, in the future, adapt well to any kind of stress or many kinds of stress. And so this is actually truly what I'd like to show you today, is how you can, as a leader in an organization, generate for yourself lots of positive options. So again, these options for the future, they are not very expensive. So, if they don't happen, you are not going to lose a lot of money, okay? And if they actually are, if you're able to make them happen, to materialize, you will have very high gain. And so this is going to be the opportunity for me to really share with you a pretty significant piece of work that we've been doing at HEC for the past few years, trying to help companies, leaders, generate those options for the future. And to me, this is absolutely key. The other elements are also organizational elements, but having those options for the future, whatever the circumstances, is really, truly important. And we're going to see with a few examples how you can prepare yourselves from that. So to actually talk about these and talk about this approach that we have developed with one of my colleagues, Laurence Lehmann-Ortega at HEC for the past few years, I need to explain to you that the way we looked at things was to, so maybe I will just close that, was to look at companies as a sum of business models, okay? And generating options for yourselves for the future in a business is actually thinking of your business models for the future. So basically, in a way, today we have 1, 2, 3, or 4 different business models. We want to have options for the future given, you know, unexpected circumstances. A nice way to look at the problem, okay, and generate all these options is actually start by our existing business models and try to generate potential new ones from them. So to talk about business models, the concept of business model is a pretty recent concept in strategy. I mean, when we say recent in strategy, it means it has, you know, 15 to 20 years. So it's more recent than other tools of strategy. We can say that the business model of a company is just a structured description of how it makes money today, okay? And so the framework that we currently use, very often, it's a very simple framework. When we try to describe business models, basically we try to describe first, you know, what we sell, to whom, and at what price. In the business world today, this is called the value proposition. I'm sure you're, you know, users of this, you know, this term or this jargon, we could say. This is obviously not enough to describe a business model. So there's another part to it, which is how you do things, everything you have to put in place to deliver your value proposition. In the framework that we use, we call it value architecture. So it's going to be about the factories, the processes that we need to put in place to deliver our value proposition. Of course, those two elements of the business model are very closely linked, one to another. And it's this unique combination that generates, you know, the money that you make, which is basically your economic result. And the economic result in this very simple framework that has 3 parts, we call it the profit equation. And so when you want to generate options for yourself for the future, what you want to do is invent other business models, okay? And if you look at this, it's pretty easy. If you want to invent new business models, you need to invent new value propositions and new value architectures, okay? And this is basically the work we've done. We have looked at many, many companies that were able to launch new business models that had prepared from themselves those options for the future. And we tried to come up with a recommendation, I would say, for existing companies so to help them actually imagine these business models of the future. So if you wish, what I'm going to share with you now, and I'm only going to give a little glimpse of it, is a tool for ideation, helping you populate your portfolio of options for the future. It's really about this. So looking at all these examples, we have put together our methodology. We call it Odyssey 314. Odyssey is the idea that, you know, going and embarking on these new options is not always an easy, you know, an easy journey. It can be full of adventures, but some misadventures as well. 3, because we're using this concept of business model in a very simplified way with 3 boxes, basically 3 parts to it. And 14, because we have actually identified 14 directions in which you can actually explore to actually find those ideas and create your options for the future. And 7 of them are related to the value proposition. So it's about finding new value propositions. And 7 are related to the value architecture. So it's about finding new ways of doing things, if you wish. And, you know, if you explore in all these directions, you're going to end up with lots of ideas that you can recombine, you know, in the way you want and create many potential business models for the future. And that would be your options, okay? And to make them positive options, therefore options that are not too costly if they fail, but can have big upsides if they succeed. You want to try those options out in very cheap ways, in a way. That's the whole idea. So I'm going to show you those 14 directions, but of course today I truly don't have time to go around all of them. So I've picked up 1 or 2 that I found were interesting, and I'm going to illustrate them with examples that that I thought maybe, would raise your interest or maybe could be relevant for you in your contest. So if we look at the value proposition, the 7 things that we're basically proposing that you do when you sit around, with your team trying to think about the future are those 7 things. So I'm going to read through them. Okay. The first thing we say is, if you want to invent new value proposition, one thing that you can truly do is try to help your clients reduce some kind of costs that they have. It could be the cost of buying your goods or services. It could be the cost of using them or maintaining them. It doesn't have to be all, but try to find value propositions that, reduce the cost for them. So when you hear this, I know what you're saying. You're thinking, okay, this is very obvious. I do this every day. I mean, she's not bringing anything to the table. And you're right. I mean, this is something that I'm sure you do every day. I think that let's say the interest of this methodology is not in the fact that every single thing is, a major breakthrough. It's really about being exhaustive and generating for yourself a maximum number of options and ideas. So the first one is about trying to reduce your client cost in your value proposition. The second one is also pretty obvious. It's about trying to solve the complications, the hassles, the pains, the different names for your clients. So that's also an easy one. The third one is a little bit more complex. It's about trying to stop, catering for your happy client and trying to develop value propositions for the very frustrated ones. The ones that are not even clients because they know about you, about your industry, but they find it very frustrating to, enter your industry, so they don't come. Okay, so it's about defocusing and trying to develop value propositions for those that say, no, thank you, this industry is not for me. The fourth one is really about moving away. If you are in a functional industry where value propositions are very functional, trying to put positive emotion in your value propositions. And if you are in a very emotional industry, like, I don't know, cosmetics, trying to put functionality into your value proposition. The fifth one is about mixing things. It's about making cocktails. So it's about mixing things that usually don't mix. So industries that don't mix together, or segments within industries that don't mix together. And this one is particularly rich and maybe less obvious, so I'm going to develop this one. The sixth one is about introducing a third party. It's about basically enriching your value proposition with another part for another party than the people that you actually serve today. And the last one is about challenging the way you make your revenue. So let me illustrate a few of these points, okay? I like this one very much because I thought of reconstruction. And this is an illustration of how you can actually reduce costs for your clients. This is actually a company that is based in Chile, I believe. And what they do is they know that, buying a home or renting a home, by the way, but buying one is truly very expensive. And therefore, what they offer is to spread out the cost over time of your home by selling half homes that you see on the top of the picture here. And later on, customers can complete or not, depending on their needs. The homes you see in the bottom, one is not fulfilled yet, and another one has been completed, and the third one has been completed, and it's in a different way. You can complete your home. So of course, in your country and in Greece, where I come from, we see a lot of houses that are being started. The first floor and the second floor is never built. So it's basically the same idea, but these houses, they look better. And basically they spread the cost. So that's an illustration of the first direction and the type of quite innovative value propositions you can find along these directions. So let's go now to the mixing. So the fifth direction I mentioned. Mixing industries is really, really very interesting. It's about taking elements from one and elements from another. So here on the upper right, we see a little vehicle. It's an electrical vehicle that was launched by Renault a few years back. It's called a Twizy. So it was not that successful, to tell you the truth. Maybe the pricing is not right, but it's a really interesting physical object that actually mixes two industries. In this case, the motorcycle and the car. So it's a tiny car. It's electrical. It looks a bit like a motorcycle. So this is an example of how you can mix industries. Another one that I found really interesting. So this is actually a startup that I met in Cambridge, Massachusetts, not very long ago. And this is a startup that tries to, bring utilities to remote rural areas in poorer countries. And there are lots and lots and lots of initiatives in this domain. But what you usually see is actually initiatives around electricity. So people who are doing different types of business models with solar panels, or we see here, we also have windmills. And you see other people that are occupying themselves with bringing clean water. And what these guys have done is actually they've put the two together, okay, in one box that is called the off-grid box that you see here, that both is going to generate electricity, so you can actually come and charge your electrical appliances. As you see, it's going to do hot water, and it's going to also clean the water, and you see someone who is actually taking drinking water here at the faucet. So I thought this idea of mixing two industries that today are separated was quite interesting. By the way, initially in history, a lot of the utility companies that were usually owned by local authorities did both water and electricity. So I thought this one was really interesting as well. Another one about mixing is this one. So this is a bike that has been sold widely, a huge success by a company called Decathlon. Decathlon is a sports retailer. And this is a company that has a lot of customer insights. They really, truly understand their customers. They observe them all the time. And they have come up with this bike, which is called Between. And now this name has become a brand for them. And this was the initial model, I would say. And this bike is really cutting across segments. So in the cycling industry, you have the women segment and you have the men segment. You have the city segment and you have the cross-country segment. And actually this bike is a mix of all. They have a very comfortable seats. This is for women because women are always very, looking after how comfortable is the seat of their bike. They have brakes that are, non-slippery, gripping, that men like very much. They have this horizontal bar that tells you this is a bike for men, but as you look at it, it's not truly horizontal because they've tried to lower it as much as possible so that women would actually use it as well. And they have those tires that are right in between city and cross-country. And this is also a very unique value proposition that was hugely successful because, of course, many people can buy these bikes, so the volumes are higher, and therefore you can reduce the cost. And one last mixing that I like very much as well is mixing in the hospitality business. Maybe some of you are from the hospitality business. You know that this is a very segmented industry because of the star system, which is fading somewhat today, but the star system is very structurally segmenting the industry. And this is one of the first hotels that I know of, at least, that has tried to cut across and create a value proposition that had elements from the 2-star hotel, so the simple, cheap hotel, and some elements of the luxury hotel, so 4 to 5 stars. What they did basically is they have not a good location. They're kind of on the outskirts of Paris in a non-touristy area, rather lower social income, 19 arrondissement precisely. The rooms are very tiny. The building is really uninteresting. There is no room service, no amenities in the room. So that's the 2-star part of the story. On the other hand, everything you have in their hotel rooms is of high quality. So the mattress is incredible. The bed linen is super good. You have a big screen. You have high-speed internet. You have beautiful faucets, but no bathtub, just a simple shower. And they were, again, very hugely successful, and it has become a chain now. And by the way, it has been acquired by Accor later on. So that was an illustration of mixing segments. Another direction that I want to illustrate is the one that we call introducing a third party. So I don't know if you recognize this place, but this is actually Plaka in Athens, so the capital of Greece. I'm half Greek and I go there very often. And once I came across this shop and I found it interesting, so I entered, and I was really surprised by the business model that this shop had developed. So their name is Zempel, and it's going to tell us a bit about what they do. Basically, this is a small supermarket where you can go shopping, but you go shopping and in fact you buy, the usual goods. They don't have fresh foods, but they have everything else that a supermarket would have. But it's by subscription. So they have a number of customers who pay about 30 euros a month, and they go in and they shop. But the value of what they're able to acquire is twice or three times actually what they pay for. So I found it really interesting. And the reason is because instead of just having a value proposition, of buy your, daily goods for a really good price, okay, they have a third party in the value proposition. And the third party are brands. Because to brands, what they offer is a unique opportunity to test their new products. So all the very big brands, multinational brands, Procter & Gamble and Unilever and Danone of the world, but also the small Greek brands are able to actually put samples in this shop. Consumers are going to buy them. And in exchange of this very low fee, they're going to fill in, surveys and give feedback to the brands. So I thought this was really interesting. So we have the normal value proposition of a supermarket, and they had introduced a third party, the brands, and they've added a part to their value proposition. So that was an example of what you can do. And the last one that I wanted to illustrate on this front is modifying your revenue stream, really challenging the way you make your revenue today. So we have here the picture of a coffee shop. It's actually a chain of coffee shops in Paris called Anti-Café. It's not anti-fragile, it's Anti-Café. And these people have challenged an industry belief, which is, to make money in a coffee shop, you need to sell a lot of coffees. What you do, as you see on the left-hand side of the slide, is you go there, you actually get a little card. You can take as many coffee and some foods as well as you like, and you're going to pay by the time, according to the time you spend in this particular cafe. Okay, so when you leave, you actually measure the time you spent and you pay. There's a minimum charge, as you see, but that's basically the principle. So you see, this is very courageous because they're going against, an industry rule, trying to challenge the way you make your revenue in this particular business. And the last one I'd like to share with you about this is a school based in California called Lambda School. So Lambda School teaches basically IT, or information systems. And they have also challenged the way schools actually make their revenue, which most of the time is tuition, backed by a loan. So let's watch this video.
At Lambda School, we offer a new approach to tuition called an Income Share Agreement, or ISA. There's no tuition upfront. Instead, after you graduate, we'll help you land a high-paying job. Then you'll pay us back with a percentage of your income for a limited time. Here are the 3 basics about ISA contracts at Lambda School. 1, it's not a loan. There's no interest, no down payment, and best of all, no debt. Instead, you agree to share a percentage of your income for a limited time. 2, it scales with you. Once you land a job that earns the minimum amount, you'll pay us back with a percentage of your income as a monthly payment. If your income falls below the minimum, your payments will pause until your income reaches the minimum again. And before you know it, your payments end for good. 3, it ends easy. Your contract is finished once you've completed the monthly payments or reached the payment cap, whichever comes first. In 5 years after graduation, your payments stop, even if you've paid nothing. We're investing in your future. Let's launch your career. Learn more at lambdaschool.com/ISA.
Okay, Okay, so here we're in front of a school that is challenging, I would say, again, the industry rule of making, revenue for schools. So I find it interesting. So to complete this, I want to give you also a few examples on how you can challenge your value architecture. In other words, the way you do things. So there are many things that you can do. For example, you can challenge your value chain. The value chain is, the activities that you have, chosen to perform. So we have a number of, ways to explore and change your value chain. But the one I really want to illustrate here is, so I'm going to illustrate this point, especially when you think about adding activities to your value chain. This can really, really change your business and, generate new businesses. And then I'm going to illustrate the one that talks about strategic resources. Strategic resources is a notion of strategy that is absolutely key for anti-fragile organization. It's about, I would say, the very few things that you have been able to develop for yourself, whether it's a brand or it's a capability, or it could be a unique location, something very specific and very unique that you have developed for yourself that makes you different from others and that you can leverage to create actually many new businesses. And so it's absolutely key for companies to actually develop strategic resources and competencies there, because they are a source of many new options for the future and therefore of anti-fragility. So let me first give an example of a company that has really revised its value chain to transform completely its business and find new opportunities for itself. So this company is, it's also, with the trend around sustainability. So this is actually a company from the Netherlands called Deso, and they do carpets, as you see on the left. And, initially they were just a carpet manufacturer. So they would take, thread that they bought, actually, you see it on the left, and they would manufacture carpet and distribute it. And gradually over time, they were challenged in their business. It was difficult, lots of competition. They decided to add activities. So they first added an activity of used carpet collection. Used carpet are a huge, environmental issue. And therefore they started collecting used carpets and added another activity, so a fourth one, by which they could shred those used carpets, taking the top and taking the bottom and creating two new materials, okay? And then they were able, with these new materials, changing the recipe to manufacture thread and carpets again, okay? And doing this, they ended up with a value chain that you see, which is circular, going from the raw material to the raw material, which changes very significantly your opportunities in business, of course. So that's an example of how you can manipulate your value chains. You can add, you can retract, you can change things. The one I really want to illustrate is this idea of strategic resources and building upon them. So I don't like so much to talk about, those big American companies that, we're talking about all the time. But here, I think I have to quote Amazon, because Amazon is remarkable in many ways, but it's particularly remarkable because as a company, it has been able over the 20 past year to generate a lot of different businesses, always from the strategic resources they built from themselves. So you know that they built an incredible website and a large database of clients. And from that, they have generated the business of marketplace. So opening this website and this client base to third parties. Second, you know that they have developed an incredible IT infrastructure and know-how, and they're selling it out as a business called Amazon Web Services. Here, we see that they have developed an incredible, logistics infrastructure and know-how, not only the warehouses, but the systems around them. They're incredibly good, and they are selling out this capability to third parties in a service that it's called Fulfillment by Amazon, and so on and so on. We know as well that they are developing delivery services that are really efficient for themselves, and they are also opening them up to third parties and so on. So Amazon, I have a colleague who compares Amazon to a bamboo. It's like if they had built very, very strong root systems, and you see, you know, emerging new plants in every domain. And this is generating options for yourself. So this is really important. The last point I will make is that sometimes in your company, you might have resources that you feel are non-strategic. So here I took a flat roof in a very sunny country, okay, that actually you can make strategic for another business. So that's another source of options, okay? So if we think of a flat roof, you know, you can probably think that you can do a bar, you know, you could open a restaurant, so you could put solar panels on top, you could open a sports club, you could open, you know, you could do different things. So I'm going to give you two examples of what you can do with a flat roof, starting as something that is non-strategic. So the first thing you can do, and I'm sure a lot of you have thought about it, is to grow, you know, plants, vegetables. So we have here in front of us a company called Bright Farms from the US. And what they do, among others, is they actually install those greenhouses on top of supermarkets so that they can grow for them vegetables that they sell, you know, just below. So that's one thing you can do with a flat roof. But even more interestingly, I think in a period of reconstruction, doing real estate with flat roofs. So here we have a company, I'm not sure it's yet a company, but at least, you know, a trial, a project from Germany, Frankfurt, where living units, you see them on the left, so they are black, these black units, okay? Living units have been conceived in such a way that they are, you know, environmentally friendly. They're made of wood panels, they're covered with solar panels. They are 60 square meters apartments, you know, at 2 levels. Everything is calculated so that they are, you know, energy positive, can be actually installed on top of existing buildings. And they're called symbionts because they actually are energy positive and they can feed back energy to the level below. So that's basically another thing that you can do with your flat roof. And lastly, again, could be relevant for you in your own environment. You can also imagine your waste as strategic resources. So here we are in an extreme example. This is the example of Hermès. Hermès is a company, a luxury goods company, as you know, and because their quality standards are super high, okay, you know, they have lots of waste, either of raw material or finished goods. So what they've decided to do is to do a business out of this that they have called Petite H, so small h, and they create unique objects because, of course, waste in their domain is not standardized, and that they can sell for a lot of money. So that's, you know, making a new business out of your waste. So this is basically what I wanted to share with you today. And I think what the question is, you know, apart from the methodology, which is nice, of course, and I would end with this opening question, and maybe we can take it into the discussion, is what are the enablers, okay? How do you bring that into the company, this ability to have, you know, many options? So I think I'll take it as a question, and I'll try to answer it in the Q&A, because I don't want to go further, because Nicolas gave me limited time. So I'll finish here, and I will turn it to my colleagues and ask if you have questions.
Thank you very much, Hélène. I hate to give you a limit of time because it's absolutely fascinating, and that was really dense. So thanks a lot for what you've shared with us. We've got a first question, which is, according to me, really interesting. So how would you practically implement your approach, the so-called business model reinvention in a company? How would you proceed?
Okay, so thank you, Nicolas. So what I would do, basically, what we always recommend is, first of all, it's not a one-person exercise. It's a collective exercise. So I would do it with several people around the table. And I would make sure that the people around the table have different, potentially conflicting points of view on what are the trends, what are our customer insights, what are our strategic resources, so that your diagnosis is richer. So, 5, 6 people around a table, okay, different points of view. You can take people from the inside, you can take your customers, you can take, I don't know, people that you trust, and do just a brainstorming exercise. Brainstorming, when we want to have efficient brainstorming, it's always recommended that we do it short, not too long, but not more than 2 hours, and we do it in a structured way. And I would say that those 14 directions I showed you is a way to structure the brainstorming.
Okay, thanks for that. And I'm going to share with you a sort of confidence. I'm a very negative person. Yeah, I see very easily what's negative in an idea, and I'm very interested because you spoke about positive options. So I'm very interested to listen from you how in a business we could secure for our company some positive options.
Okay, so yes, I think that one of the messages of today is you need to have more than one option. Okay, you need really to populate your portfolio, and as your resources are limited, okay, you can only put small bets. Okay, your resources are not infinite, and so all companies that really want to generate those options for themselves because they see beyond, they prepare for the future, they want to be anti-fragile and resist and survive and thrive actually with adverse events, are faced with this problem. So the one answer that we can give, which is to develop these options early on through experimentation. In other words, try them out rather than waiting. Try them out as soon as possible, but in a little scale. So basically, do small experimentations around those different options. Don't wait too long, because as you do those small experimentations, you're going to spend a little bit of money, not a lot, and you will learn. You will learn which ones are actually valid, which ones are not valid. So my general recommendation is experiment early. That is going to help you learn from it, and you will therefore have options that, if they fail, you will not lose a lot of money. And if they succeed, you can do this in an iterative way. The upside might be really great. Another thing that is really specific to our times is that if you have several options, let's imagine that you have 10 different possibilities ahead of you. It's very, very difficult to pinpoint the ones that will be big and the one that will be small. For me, it's like playing this game called Battleship. So when you hit a ship, okay, you don't know whether it's a big one or a small one. So you have to explore around. It's exactly the same idea. You don't know if your business model ideas for the future will be big or small. Try them out. And find ways to experiment them cheaply and fast. That would be my answer.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. We've got a question of Buden. And I'm going to translate it a little bit. He was asking, in the value architecture, so we are back to the business model. In the value architecture, do you include environment? So in other words, how is sustainable development impacting the business model?
Okay. So no, the business model as a concept of strategy, I would say, does not do it all. So it's not the only tool that you can use in strategy. In fact, there is an hypothesis behind everything I said today, which is that you have done your job in understanding the environment. Okay, so you can only generate these options. Of course, one of the, I would say, one of the prerequisites is that you understand the trends of the moment, okay, and that you embark some of those trends in the options that you generate. So if we are talking, sustainability, you are going to, when you generate the options and you think about new value propositions and new value architecture, of course, you're going to integrate in your ideas, these trends. But the study of the trends, if you wish, the tools to study trends, they exist, but they're not within the business model. It's a tool among several that we can use in strategy.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe Nicolas, I guess you're still with us. Maybe you have a question for Hélène?
Yes, I have a question. And in fact, I would like to know, Hélène, thank you very much, firstly, for the very inspiring conversation in many terms. Probably having followed the crisis in Greece yourself closely, we have a crisis at the moment, and we are all busy firefighting the moment itself. Can we still find the moment to generate options? This is the first question. Maybe you have some insights from Greece itself. The second is, would be, do you recommend to involve our team themselves from one side in these generations of options, and the new generation, the youngest people, to have an important role to play in generating options, and how can we structure that?
Okay, so my answer is yes and yes. So I'll go to the second question. When we do workshops around those topics at HEC, more and more often we actually, and when we do it with executives, which I suppose is the audience of today mainly, we invite our students more and more. And I can tell you it's very valuable. So definitely yes. The more you can bring to the table, actually different points of view, but not only points of view of young people, also maybe points of view of older people, but different points of view, the better. So I would really encourage you. On the second part of this question, I'm a strong believer personally of what we call bottom up. So in other words, implicating, people in the company into the strategy process. Why? Because we know, it's been proven over and over again, that when people are, when people participate to a decision, to basically making a decision, they are much more eager to implement it. So it's going to help you for implementation. So this is a basic trick of a leader of change. Okay, one of the things that you can do is make people participate, but you have to do it truthfully. Okay, you have to do it with an open mind. If you do it and you have already the answer, they will guess you, and they won't play the game a second time. So I would recommend to go for it if you truly think that you have an open mind. You will listen maybe not to everything they have to say, but part of it. And then, yes, I think it's better. You lose a bit of time in the beginning because you have to organize such a process, but all this time that you feel you lose, you will gain in the implementation phase.
As far from examples from Greece, do you have any example?
Well, actually, I'm a little bit on this one. I'm a little bit skeptical because I would say the crisis in Greece, in my view, hasn't brought as much change and rebirth and anti-fragility that I would have expected, to tell you the truth. I was expecting this, and it did not truly happen. However, this little company that I showed you is actually a company that was directly created for the crisis because they were offering, cheaper goods to people who had very, very little money at this point. This is also why I wanted to mention it today. So, I have mixed feelings about that.
Thank you, Hélène.
Okay, so we are caught by the patrol, and the real boss of this series of masterclass, and I'm happy to hand over to Laetitia for the closing.
Yes, thank you, Nicolas. Thank you, Hélène, for this very, very interesting webinar. And we would like to thank you all on behalf of HEC Paris for taking part to this conference. We do hope you can join us for our other webinars, and the next one will take place next week on Thursday, October the 15th, 5 p.m. CET also, with Professor Véronique Nguyen, and she will talk to you about the art of self-reinvention. So until then, keep well, stay tuned. You can watch our webinars on the YouTube channel of HEC Paris Executive Education, and see you next week. Thank you, bye-bye.
Thank you, bye.
Bye.
Thank you for attending.